What's up, people? Back with another reaction, back with some more punk rock, and we're back with some more Propagandhi. We're gonna go to their sort of bonus material or, unreleased material album where Quantity is job number one, a very funny album title for an album like that. And just shout out to, I'm guessing that's Chris, I have no clue. Maybe it's Jord. Either way, it's hilarious. But yeah, it says, warning, this CD contains old, out of print, hard to find, unreleased, live, demo, and otherwise painful and embarrassing crap. Not new crap. Proceed with caution. It's interesting, admittedly, of the albums I have from Propagandhi, it is the one I listen to the least, but I do enjoy having it, and it's cool to hear not only some songs that didn't make it to albums, some covers. There's a cool cover of a Concrete Blonde song called True. Perhaps I'll react to that one. But yeah, there's some live material, and I mentioned it I think in another reaction. But one of my favorite moments, there's a part where they're like talking between songs, and someone shouts out from the crowd, "Play some fucking songs!" And one of the guys, I think it's Jord, is like, "Hey, we're just carrying on in the Propagandhi tradition of being poorly unorganized." And I think it's Chris is like, "Poorly unorganized? Isn't that a double negative?" And again, as a grammarian and editor, I really want to shout that out, because again, you can be poorly organized or you can be unorganized, but if you're poorly unorganized, it's clearly a double negative. So yeah, it's interesting to hear their sort of like banter. I've seen them live twice. The time where I saw them for the Today's Empires tour, they were very workmanlike. They didn't talk a whole lot between songs, maybe a little bit, but it was very workmanlike. When I saw them in 2017 on the Victory Lap tour, they definitely talked a little bit more between songs, and they talked about Sue Lin coming into the group and so on. So like, yeah, it was interesting to see the contrast between two shows of the same band years apart. But yeah, we're gonna listen to a tune called "Homophobes Are Mad Because They Can't," or just mad because they can't get laid. The title gives you a hint what it's about, and indeed I enjoy this song because I mentioned when I reacted to their Less Talk More Rock, which is about sort of, celebrating LGBTQ like sexuality and not sort of like, being willing to fight against depression and bigotry and so on, except on that issue. And the reason it seems so relevant to me is because I remember talking to a friend of mine who was into punk rock and Propagandhi, especially the first record. And when they got this record, I remember talking to them, and they're like, "Oh, that song, Less Talk More Rock, like, such a cool sound, but then, it's like, oh, like, the subject matter, it makes me, like, uncomfortable, whatever." And he was basically saying, like, he felt, like, embarrassed to play it loud. And I was like, but don't you see, that's kind of the point of the song, that, like, number one, like, the song itself is actually about, like, look, if you like punk rock and whatever, and you bought our record, but somehow you're not in support of gay rights, then haha, the joke's on you, because, your hands are down my pants by the transitive property because you paid money for this record. But that experience sort of led me to think that, like, man, because I knew this person was, very much against racism and, like, didn't like the oppression of, like, people lower on the socioeconomic rungs and so on. Like, as a person who cared about, treating people better in society and so on, but he was uncomfortable about being seen to, like, support gay causes and so on, and being, like, pro-gay. So I thought that was a very sort of revealing sort of moment. And so when I heard this song a little bit later, I remember thinking of that experience and be like, man, like, he was opposed to racism, but he wasn't comfortable, like, extending that to people of different sexual orientations. So yeah, I thought of that when I heard this song, and indeed the song is basically saying, like, and there's also a tie-in, I think, to, like, Who Will Help Me Bake This Bread, because there's a suggestion that some of the people the narrator or Chris is trying to convince respond to that sort of, like, in a hyper-masculine way by, like, lashing out with violence, like, "No, I'm not gay, and, I'll beat you up to prove it." And again, like in Who Will Bake This Bread, Chris is basically saying, like, look, you can use violence, you can hit me, but it isn't going to change the fact that you're a hypocrite. Like, you're all for equality and all for, like, fighting against bigotry if it's cool, and, like, your friends will see it as, like, an admirable thing. But if it makes people uncomfortable, if it, people are, like, homophobic and they're not comfortable with that, even though they claim to be against racism and so on, then that's fucking weak. I think the last line of the song is, "That's fucking weak." So yeah, I like the take on the situation, and again, having seen it basically manifest in my own personal life before I heard this song, that like, yeah, I love Propagandhi, and I support fighting against depression and so on, but yeah, it makes me feel weird to like, play a song that's about supporting gay people and so on. And it's like, man, like, I think you've like missed the essence of, what they're talking about. So yeah, I always think of that, but let's get to it. This is Homophobes Are Mad, or Just Mad, cause they can't get laid. It's cause, like C-U-Z, like stylized. So yeah, Propagandhi, Homophobes Are Just Mad Cause They Can't Get Laid, from the, what year did this album come out? I'm gonna say 98. Came out 98, yeah, I was right. What do you know about that? So yeah, Propagandhi, 1998, Homophobes Are Just Mad Cause They Can't Get Laid. Optimistic even. Like you wave your fucking flag. You'll prove it to me now. You're no bang. Nothing I have said has changed your little mind. It's stay a click and when I run you will be left behind. That quality's just true. When I have friends I agree, but freedom's just not hip when it's all sexuality. I fucking hate. Awesome. It's funny because, like the album sort of very freely proclaims that, this isn't stuff that was good enough to make it to the albums. Some of the stuff is like just in demo form. It wasn't like, properly recorded and mastered, or like not, post-production mastering and so on. So I do think there's some songs on here that, they do sound like, B-sides or again demos that never really came to full fruition. This song, I think, again, maybe the recording sounds a bit raw. Like I think it could have been, tuned up in the studio and like, mastered in a more like robust way. But in terms of the Sonics themselves, I think that's a good enough tune that it could have been on Less Talk More Rock, which I guess would have been the last one, because it was Less Talk More Rock 95. And I don't think they put out another record till Empire, or Today's Empires, which is what, 01? So yeah, basically, I feel like this could have been on Less Talk More Rock, but again, maybe with like a remaster, like a proper recording. But yeah, so let me know what you think. Again, I think this it fits very much in the same avenue or the wake of Less Talk More Rock, the song. So yeah, let me know what you think. And again, I remember I played this album for someone, and they were less familiar with Propagandhi's material. They were like, yeah, like, again, I sympathize with what they're saying or whatever, but it sounds a bit like raw, like a garage recording or something. I was like, yo, it literally says on the back that, like, this is embarrassing shit, like demo shit, unreleased shit, whatever. And it's like, oh, okay. So yeah, like, again, just to stress in case, you don't know their catalog as well, this is stuff that they never actually put out on a proper album or like an EP. But again, I think some of it is very much like not only worth hearing, but at least in a few cases, good enough that it could have been on an album. So let me know what you think. Other than that, I will see you next time.